A good villain should terrify the audience, right? Seriously, that's basically Villain 101. Yet somehow, even the biggest animation studios still mess it up. We're told to fear the villain, to respect them, but we don't. So why does this happen? And more importantly, how do you write a terrifying villain? And how do you not? There are 4 core ways to make a villain truly terrifying. The first, a villain who doesn't even need to try. Take Death from Puss in Boots. He shows up with calm confidence. No dramatic music or yelling. We get this. Did you catch the candle going out right before he arrives? It's subtle, but it matters. It's like Death needed darkness before he could enter. And that makes sense because death is darkness. It's what we see when we close our eyes for the last time. But even if we don't want to go that far, darkness still unnerves us because we never know what might be watching from the shadows. That same darkness follows Death in every scene. His cloak, his silhouette, his color palette. It's all built to reflect what he is, a presence that sucks the light out of the room. Then we hear that whistle. It serves as an audible marker of power, immediately shifting everything cold and tense. You sense his control before you even see him. His design reinforces this. The visual contrast, the white fur against the dark palette, mirrors the timeless clash of life and death. Then there's his voice. Wagner Moura delivers every line flat, measured but effective.
I do love the smell of fear. It's intoxicating.
It also doesn't help that that voice and those remarks come from a figure that towers over Puss by many feet. Not to mention his red glowing eyes and 2 sickle-shaped weapons. Death never needed to perform or boast. The first time he meets Puss, he sits close to the cocky cat and casually asks for an autograph.
Sign right there.
That calm, paired with his unblinking focus, makes Death all the more frightening. He's the wolf at the end of the road, because he's inevitable. That gives him the confidence not to try too much to be terrifying. And that's why, when Puss runs every time he shows up, he doesn't run after him. He doesn't break a sweat because he doesn't need to. Now, here's the part that makes it sting. The audience realizes what Puss realizes. You can't win against this. You're not supposed to. This isn't a villain with a weakness to exploit. This is the end. The fear comes from what he represents. Finality.
You know we will meet again, right?
Sí, hasta la muerte.
Another villain who shares the same, doesn't even need to try to be evil quality as Death is Pitch Black.
Finally! Someone who knows how to have a little fun.
But where Death uses darkness as a silent presence, a kind of inevitable stillness, Pitch is more active. He moves through darkness. He is literally and metaphorically darkness. He is the fear lurking under the bed and behind the door. But here's the wild part. Before he ever appears, the Guardians are already scared. We first feel his presence when a shadow envelops the giant globe in the North Pole, signifying a cosmic-level dread. Even North, this universe's Santa Claus, and maybe the most powerful of the Guardians, goes stiff. You can see the concern on his face. Something old, something buried is back. And that's the real brilliance of Pitch's terror. He builds up like a myth. The Guardians speak about him like a returning plague, a name they hoped to never say again. Because of this, they summon all 4 Guardians to strategize. But if that wasn't enough, the Man in the Moon appoints
Jack Frost.
Think about that. An ancient cosmic entity chooses to recruit someone new just to deal with Pitch's return. That's the cinematic equivalent of God patching the Avengers with a surprise player before the villain even says a single word. So Pitch becomes terrifying long before he's even shown. His legend crawls ahead of him. He terrifies through reputation, through whispered fear, through the way powerful beings drop everything just because he is back. When a villain doesn't even need to step into the frame to scare everyone, that's when you know they don't have to try. Ramses in The Prince of Egypt also comes close. He looks like any human ruler, but he holds absolute control over life and death without even trying. Why? Well, the easiest answer is that he inherited it from his father, who ruled over Egypt before him.
His hands bore the blood of thousands of children.
Slaves.
However, Ramses on his own was still to be feared because he could have changed his father's ways. But he didn't. In fact, he was worse. Moses once saw him as a brother. Now he causes the worst plague, demands the Hebrews stay enslaved, and turns his grief into cruelty.
Leave me.
We know the horror of watching someone loved become untouchable. What makes it scary and effortless is how natural it feels. Arrogance, entitlement, stubborn pride. That transformation stuns the audience deeply because even love can't reach him. And then there's Mordu from Brave, who wants to join that club but doesn't quite get in. The film is great, but it builds him up like a creature of legend, an ancient prince turned monster, cursed by his own ambition. He's supposed to be the shadow that stalks the woods, the ghost story that sticks in your spine. But when he finally appears, he's just a big angry bear.
Mordu!
Kill it!
No voice, no personality, no chilling presence. He roars and charges, but that's all sound and fury. There's no deeper terror, no psychological unease. Unlike Death or Pitch, Mordu doesn't haunt the story, he just crashes through it. But terrifying the audience can go further than just using sound and color to a filmmaker's advantage. There's something even more powerful about silence, which is the second option to terrify the audience. Lord Shen is the perfect embodiment of a villain whose whispered or quiet aura is scarier than that of a loud villain. Shen moves through scenes with quiet grace. His movements almost look like that of a ballerina.
Yes, didn't you see the peacock on the front door?
His white feathers and gray robes evoke elitism. You know how modest old money fashion is? Yup, that's Shen style too. There's no wastage of colors when the carnage he brings with his calmness is colorful enough. Blood, fire, and death. But beyond his aesthetics, Shen has a measured way of speaking. He doesn't waste words and doesn't hurry. His voice carries a soft-spoken, aristocratic tone.
As a start, I might also convert the basement into a dungeon.
Yet, behind this serene facade lies a chilling ambition, fueled by genocide, manipulation, and an insatiable thirst for control. He aims to conquer China, not through brute force like Tai Lung, his predecessor, but through technological superiority. Let's not forget about how he almost wiped out an entire village of pandas just because of what a soothsayer said. Furthermore, one other thing that makes Shen dangerous is his patience and obsession with perfection.
30 years I've waited for this moment. Everything must be exactly how I envisioned it.
He truly makes you feel that the stillness of a sophisticated plan can be infinitely more devastating than the loudest roar of a beast. However, Shen is not alone in this. Villains like Dr. Olivia Octavius from Into the Spider-Verse and the Other Mother from Coraline don't scream or growl their way into our nightmares. They smile, speak softly, and lean in instead of striking initially. Olivia Octavius arrives as a scientist, warm and curious, speaking to Peter with the voice of someone who's just happy to be a part of the conversation.
Oh, okay, that's a no-no. We don't like that.
This is fascinating.
Then, without ever changing her tone, she reveals she's here to kill them. The same gentle smile stays on her face as she chases them through the lab, gleefully destroying everything in her path. The Other Mother plays a similar trick. She offers Coraline everything she wants: home-cooked meals, undivided attention, a world designed just for her.
You're just in time for supper, dear.
Yeah, she looks creepy, especially with the buttons for eyes. But that is completely overlooked by Coraline, who is finally getting everything she has always wanted from this other mother. And that's the trick. She whispers, soothes, and reassures, but her voice never changes, even when the truth starts to show. She doesn't rage when Coraline disobeys. She tightens the leash, smile intact.
Even the proudest spirit can be broken with love.
That restraint, that polite menace, is what makes her so disturbing. Like Shen, she doesn't roar unless as a last resort. The great example of a villain who tried to play it cool and failed is Steppenwolf from Justice League. He speaks in a soft tone and carries himself like a controlled, godlike being, but it never lands. His dialogue is cringy and robotic, full of forced gravitas that makes it hard to take him seriously.
You will love me.
No, we won't. And we didn't. Nobody liked Steppenwolf. His facial expressions and tone are too flat to feel threatening, and his motivations are so underdeveloped that his calmness reads more like boredom. Unlike Shen or the Other Mother, who use quietness to lure you in and mess with your head, Steppenwolf's quietness just makes him forgettable. And this is why this next type of villain is so important. One of the scariest types of villains let their reputation walk into the story before they do. That is Drago Bloodfist. Even his name packs a punch. There's Drago, which is basically dragon without the N, maybe because N to him stands for nervous, and seeing how nothing scares the guy, he opted to get rid of that letter. Then there's Bloodfist, which has something in it that sounds like blood. Together, Drago Bloodfist is already terrifying before his legend is announced. When Eret first mentions Drago, he talks about a dragon army which to Astrid and Hiccup is something unprecedented.
Dragon army.
Look, we don't want any trouble.
But things become even more serious when Eret points to the scar Drago left on his chest the last time he failed him.
He promised to be far less understanding in the future.
For Astrid, Hiccup, and the audience, that mark is enough caution. But then Eret gave a final warning, telling them that he is coming for all the dragons. Nevertheless, DreamWorks knew that in order to make him even more terrifying, before he shows up, he needed more social proof. This led us to the scene between Hiccup and Stoic.
Dargo Bloody Fist or something.
The second Stoic hears even something that sounds like Drago Bloodfist, his mood changes, reflected by the horror in his face. He shifts into emergency mode. Orders fly, gates slam shut, dragons are grounded. There's no argument, no delay. He knows what's coming, and that reaction tells us everything we need to know.
Because Drago Bloodfist is a madman without conscience or mercy.
That's the power of a reputation. Drago's evil is old and proven to the point that even Stoic, the strongest man on the island, is scared of him. But here's something that most might miss. During the first minutes of the movie, Drago was foreshadowed directly. However, there was another thing DreamWorks did with Drago's legend that increased its tension or stakes. This was the arrival of Hiccup's long-lost mother, Valka. She storms in as a masked dragon rider, commands a whole fleet of dragons, snatches Hiccup, strands Toothless, and disappears into the clouds. The scene is eerie, impressive, and completely disorienting. And in that moment, Hiccup says what we're all thinking.
Drago Bloodfist?
But she's not. She's his mother. And that reveal does something clever. It delays our encounter with Drago. We're left hanging, thinking if this masked figure isn't Drago, then how powerful is the real one? The movie stretches the suspense, and with it, our expectations. This brings us to what's probably the most important detail about writing a villain that terrifies long before they appear. You see, when the villain eventually shows up, they must live up to the hype. That is, a villain has to have both bark and bite, and Drago is him. He's that kind of villain. Everything and more that Eret and Stoic warned about was in full display when Drago finally showed up. Dragons bow, an alpha is killed, Toothless loses his mind, and even Stoic dies. Now that's how to write a terrifying villain. Another bad guy that is similar to Drago is Pitch Black, but since we already spoke about him, we will talk about someone else, the Horned King from the Black Cauldron. The Horned King doesn't need much screen time to strike fear. His terror begins the moment Dalben first mentions his name.
But if the Horned King should find its power, nothing could stand against him.
He says the Horned King is searching for the Black Cauldron, an ancient weapon that can raise an unstoppable army of the dead. And the worst part, he might use Henwen, a sweet innocent pig, to find it. That's how we first meet the villain. Through a sense of dread, not action. We see others panic, and that's how the fear starts. By the time his creatures swoop in and snatch Henwen, we've already built him up in our minds. We've been told what he wants, what he's capable of, and that he's willing to torture a magical animal to get it. And when he is finally revealed, it is equally as terrifying. So terrifying that even his minions are scared of him. The film itself might be kinda awful, but the Horned King's presence nails that slow burn terror. He's a classic example of a villain who scares you before he even says a word. Like Drago, the legend of him sets the tone, and his arrival proves the legend was no exaggeration. On the opposite, there's Screenslaver from Incredibles 2. She also tries to be that kind of villain, but doesn't quite land the same. Granted, she has the setup. She hacks TVs, delivers eerie monologues, and seems to be everywhere without ever showing up. That mystery should build tension, but the problem is that the reveal deflates the fear.
So you're the Screenslaver.
Yes and no.
Once we find out it's just Evelyn pulling the strings, the threat loses its punch. She monologues too much, and her plan and motivation are weak and even irrational. So yes, Screenslaver would have fit the framework of a villain who's scary before they appear, but the execution just doesn't hold up. Drago builds to a roar, Screenslaver fades into a shrug. Now, let's talk about the kind of villains who don't need to lurk in the shadows or have people talk about their reputation. We are talking about those guys so powerful that hiding isn't even part of the plan. They want to wreck your life, look you dead in the face, and ask, "So, what are you gonna do about it?" Sometimes it's just about control and absolute power. Who has it versus who doesn't? Truly, the scariest villains tilt the entire balance of power in their favor. When they enter a scene, the world suddenly feels rigged. Tai Lung's prison break in Kung Fu Panda is a masterclass in how fear is built through dominance. This wasn't a casual lockup, but an engineering marvel built for one creature. Imagine a vertical fortress drilled into a frozen mountain, designed with only one purpose: containment. There are 1,000 guards stationed at every level, hundreds of crossbows mounted across the walls, not to mention how he has been chained in one position. Every element is designed to say, "You are not getting out of here, ever." Yet he gets out. All it takes is a single feather, accidentally dropped by a messenger goose. That's how tight the system is, but that's also how fragile it turns out to be. He uses that feather to pick a lock, snap his restraints, and begin a climb that turns the entire prison into a war zone. He dismantles the entire fortress with calm, brutal efficiency. He uses the environment against them: chain whips, falling debris, collapsing platforms. He flings guards like rag dolls, swings from wreckage, and scales walls that were never meant to be climbed. Within minutes, he reaches the surface, walks past the last line of defense, and stands tall while the prison burns behind him. But Tai Lung doesn't just escape. He explodes back into the world like a reckoning, eyes locked on the Jade Palace. The Furious Five confront him at the edge of a rope bridge, and what should be a clash of legends almost turns into a lopsided match. Tigress, Monkey, Viper, Mantis, Crane. Individually, they're all elite. Together, they should be unstoppable, but Tai Lung cuts through them too.
Shifu taught you well.
Then he charges straight toward the palace, where he defeats Shifu, the one who trained him, the one who knew all his moves. It's a brutal personal fight. Shifu gives everything he has, but Tai Lung still wins. And when he eventually encounters the real Dragon Warrior, he could have overpowered him too. But as he tries the same deadly nerve strike on Po, it doesn't do the trick. This has nothing to do with Po being stronger or faster, but because the panda's fat literally blocks the pressure points. If Po had hit the gym weeks before, nothing would have stopped Tai Lung. Now, that's how to write a villain with extreme power and control. General Kai from Kung Fu Panda 3 is another villain who radiates unstoppable power like Tai Lung. Introduced through legends, Kai is a soul stealer. He is so bad that he defeats Oogway and takes his chi. Think about it, Oogway, the greatest of them all, overpowered in just a few minutes. That's insane. But Kai doesn't stop there. As soon as he returns to the mortal world, he defeats other masters, steals their chi, and turns them into jade zombies under his control. This includes the Furious Five. Villains like Kai are just downright scary, and for a while, the audience would usually question the possibility of their downfall. Now, Mandrake from Epic is an example of how not to terrify the audience using the idea of absolute power. While he also embodies immense power and a visually menacing presence, his brand of terror operates distinctly from the direct, overwhelming force of a Tai Lung or a Kai. Mandrake looks every bit the part of a horror villain.
Ronin! What a surprise! I get so few guests.
His essence is pure rot and corruption, a living antithesis to life. His goal is equally terrifying, to plunge the entire forest into eternal darkness and decay, wiping out all life. This is an existential threat, no doubt, and he wages war with a relentless, consuming power. However, his power, while vast, isn't about the individual, direct physical or spiritual supremacy that defines Tai Lung or Kai. Tai Lung simply punches through anything that stands in his way, a master of physical combat no one can match. Kai absorbs the very essence of powerful masters, instantly neutralizing their might and adding it to his own, making him a spiritual black hole of power. However, Mandrake, by contrast, is a force of slow, inevitable ruin, but one whose direct combat capabilities, while strong, aren't depicted as individually invincible in the same way. His ultimate defeat further highlights this distinction. He is vanquished by the pure force of life and growth, personified by the moonlit pod of the new queen. This specific vulnerability, this complete antithesis to his nature, is what destroys him. He embodies absolute destructive power, but his unstoppability is predicated on the lack of its opposite. Tai Lung and Kai, on the other hand, felt like they could only be stopped by something truly unique or an absolute cosmic fluke like Poe's belly fat, or Poe mastering universal chi. And that's the difference. Anyway, with so many animation studios like Disney messing up their villains these days, there's one studio that has been getting it right. Want to know which one? Click this video right here.